everyone, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to a bit of a mess situation at my desk. But here is what I'm planning to do today. I have taken a picture in our last Cornwall trip, and I really loved the textures. So in fact there are two pictures here, more of a close-up and then slightly further out. So we've got the textures of the rocks. Basically it was on the beach and there was a tide coming in and out, and as the tide was out there was some remaining water that was covering kind of these depth of the rocks, and then inside there, which you can see better here, we have got some beautiful medusas, like jellyfish. Oop. And also some speckles of beautiful chartreuse type of colored seaweeds. And so somehow I want to capture those textures and be encouraged. Also, if you look closely, you might recognize those seashells. We picked some of them as well. They basically suck onto bottom of the boats, ships, rocks, and even some like whales and larger type of fish. So basically I really love these textures, and I'm not going to be drawing a realistic picture of what I can see, but rather being inspired by the color palette and textures. Now, what's the best way of bringing texture into watercolor? Of course, you can use pigment separating watercolors, such as, so we have got Green Appetite and we have Cascade Green by Daniel Smith, and as you can see, the colors, the pigments are separating. So basically you could do that, or you could go for something granulating. Also Moon Glow and Shadow Violet, they're also great examples for pigment separating colors. So you can do that, or you can also start playing with different transparencies, opacities, and values. And this is where it becomes super fun. So maybe I'll just show you just a watercolor kind of example, and then what you could do by adding some of the other art supplies. Now, I know that there are people that just love using watercolor. They're not interested in any other supplies, and I guess this video I am creating to inspire those of you who don't believe into mixing other mediums with watercolors, just because I want to demonstrate how gorgeously beautiful things can become playing together with watercolor. Okay, just in case you're interested, I am drinking my latte, which at this point looks like sea foam. Not very sexy, but it's a beautiful latte. And then as a snack, I've got these dark chocolate pistachios. So these I get from a Turkish shop. Okay, just for privacy reasons, I will now put my phone away, because otherwise there would be messages and things popping up. So what sort of things will you need for this tutorial is, of course, some sort of paper. I highly advise to use a sketchbook rather than just a singular piece of paper. Sketchbook allows you a nice spread, and you can develop that small study in a bigger study. So if you do a double page spread at some point, you don't have to do it all in one sitting. You can always come back. In fact, sometimes when I'm enjoying something, I am likely to leave the other page blank and carry on with another project on another page somewhere, purely because I might want to revisit this sort of study and expand it further. Then you'll need a watercolor brush. Of course, you'll need some sort of a tray for mixing. So if you have already a palette, great. If not, use one of those individual trays, or a plain plate will do as well. And then we have just a variety here. You can see the colors I have picked of different mediums. So we've got watercolor pencils, we've got regular colored pencils, we've got the Neocolor 2s, and also one Neocolor 1, which I'll show you a cute little trick, and then Tombow. So these are water-soluble markers. They're great to use in place of watercolor, together with watercolor, and all sorts of things. So we'll cover all of that. And then also I've got some super bright and strong value medium here, which is basically acrylic ink. So that will create the strongest contrast in our paintings. And I've got a number of things. So there's a golden high flow acrylics, which basically is acrylic ink. And this color is green gold. So it's a gorgeous juicy green, which you can see right there in the seaweed. And then I have got Payne's Grey and Antelope Brown, both by Dalarani. And it is gorgeous. That's all I will say for now, but you'll see yourself. Okay, so I don't think I will need any type of pen. I'm just going for now, just kind of focus on just the watercolor. So I'm going to start with water, naturally. And the main focus will be those jellyfish. So let's see. I've got a number of colors here. This is one of my quite old palettes, and I do enjoy playing with it, even though it's been so long. So let's see, we've got some jellyfish, which have these sort of shapes, like that. And they are see-through, so we're not making the color too dense. We're just kind of looking at the shapes, and we're looking at the textures that these jellyfish are creating. So, like I said, just working with a highly pigmented or pigment separated color helps us to create these lovely effects. And there's loads and loads and loads of them, so you might as well just go ahead and just make loads of these shapes. Now, if you wanted a more gray color, we can try neutralizing it with a yellow. So I've got Indian yellow here, and this was obviously way too much. So I'm just going to go back into this color, and then we get more of a gray, like so. So less purple. So at this point you can also start layering things over. Bring this color somewhere down here. There's loads and loads and loads of them. You can also step away and touch a little more. So here we go. Maybe some also just flatter shapes, like that. Okay, so that's the jellyfish. Then we have got, in between the jellyfish, we've got darker colors. But for now, I'm going to actually think of adding a bit of red. In fact, let me try and mix up a different type of a gray. So how would I approach it? We know that if we combine all three primaries, aka yellow, blue and red, we're going to get to some sort of a neutral color, and you can adjust it to your liking. And sometimes you don't get there straight away. You might want to play around, but there we go. Adding a bit of quinacridone violet gave us this gorgeous grey. So for the rocks, I'm just going to kind of look at the rocks. and the textures. Okay, and there's some rocks on this side as well, so I'm going to go back in and recreate that colour. So alizarin crimson, indanthrone blue and Indian yellow, and then into that I added quinacridone violet, and this time it hasn't fully worked, so I can just tweak things, add a bit of blue, and there we go, we've got this gorgeous grey. So I'm going to create a hard edge of this rock and then just add water. So there are ways of creating texture with watercolor. Okay, then let's go to the colors that I mentioned earlier. So we have Cascade Blue, which is gorgeous to use in place of water, although this water in there is not that color, but I'm just going to try and see what we can create here. I'm going to try different techniques, wet into dry, and just dry, and just play. Also find out what brush size is more comfortable for you. It could be that this is too small for the size that you're working in. Now we have Green Apatite. This would be great for those kind of like seaweed interpretations, so I'm just going to sprinkle it. So there's a lot of seaweed in between the medusas, and then adding a bit of water just creates that magic. There we go. And then that super bright green, I'm going to go into green gold. That would be the best type of color for that juicy piece of seaweed right there. I also can see some warmth as well, so we can add the speckles. So roughly here somewhere we've got that. I'm going to let it flow into the watercolor. Another thing you can do, although I'm not too fond because I think it's sort of is a bit more amateur-like, is the sprinkling. But here, because of the textures, it might work okay. So that's that. And then warmth, we have got rich green gold. That could give us that warm effect. So here I'm just going to kind of touch it in places. Just layer it a little bit. Just like that, so we can play with the layering of the watercolors. So essentially this is a very quick study. We've got loads of colors from the picture, we've got some rocks going on. In fact, I could add a bit of this warmth if I maybe neutralized it with something. Let's see, what did I neutralize? Oh, there's a good Naples yellow here. Let's just add a bit of Naples yellow, and that could go on top of those rocks. It's supposed to look like sand, so I'm just going to add it. So immediately I can say that there is no contrast in those medusas. So how would I bring it out? I probably would go back into those colors and just maybe just bring a little touch of contrast and bring out the shapes a bit more so they're not as lost. I'm also using a napkin for water control. So I might just do a bit of this. And that kind of brings out these jellyfish a bit more. It's nice if this color catches onto another color and they just kind of like mingle a little. The essence here is just to bring out the shape. So this technique is called glazing. You can do that to emphasize on a line. So here we have got a very quick study of textures, and basically this is inspired by this picture right here. So we've got the rounder shapes, we've got the green in between, we've got some blues which aren't really in the picture, but I kind of felt like adding them there. And now I will see how I can bring other mediums onto this page and show you how I would do the same thing but using more mediums. So before we start the process, I have here Neocolor 2. Now what I would recommend before you dive into the next exercise is study the opacity of your mediums and the behavior of your mediums. So I will show you what that means. So we've got some Neocolors here, and I'm just going to let them play a little bit. And then we've got also this, which I'll show you another great thing that you can do. So this is Neocolor 1, and if I take, let's take something quite dark, like this is Indanthrone Blue, I think. So basically you end up with this effect. Now, if I wanted to replicate those white shells, what I could do is get a Neocolor 1 in white, create those markings, and then go over it on top with watercolor. Not entirely sure why I don't have a white Neocolor 1, but let me also show you in this example here. What's this? Colored pencil. Okay, if that's gonna work or not, I don't know, but this is quite an oily, opaque white pencil by Holbein. I just want to see if we can create the same look. Yeah, that works as well. So essentially what I could do is I could look at those. Let me try with the different color here, the blue. I could look at those shells and roughly just scatter them around, some of them a bit bigger, some of them smaller, and then just go around it with watercolor. And that could be a lovely texture. Now let me show you, if you do that with Neocolor 2, that will be a different ball game. So this is water soluble, remember that. So imagine those are the seashells we're trying to create a pattern of. Okay, and now I'm going to go with my dark blue, and you can see it's not doing that because it's water soluble. So you can get to see some of those shapes underneath, but it's more mixing now together and creating this like a pastel look, which also something you could try. Okay, so those are those. Then we have got, let's see, watercolor pencils. Another reason you should do this part of swatching and test running your supplies is because sometimes it depends on paper, and well, it always depends on paper, but sometimes the papers that don't want to cooperate, and then you end up with something that doesn't look as great. So for example, pencils is one of the art supplies that not every paper is happy to collaborate with. So then we have got here watercolor pencils. These are by Faber-Castell and they're the Albrecht Dürer. So watercolor pencils means they're water soluble, and you can use them for extra texture, because although they are water soluble, you still get that texture remaining underneath. And then we've got just a regular pencil. So we've got here Holbein, and we have got the Luminance pencils. Let's start with the Luminance. So these are beautiful. Again, I picked the colors that I could sort of see in the picture, but of course you can always expand it even more. But if you do have a large collection of colors in pencils and art supplies, minimizing it is always better. So you're going like backwards with the color palette. The reason you have collected many colors is so that you have options. But when it comes to an art piece, it doesn't mean that you have to use all of your 105 green pencils. So minimizing things works really nicely and better in my opinion. So here we have got Tombow, and this is 158. So here is where the texture comes in. We can use the small nib at the back, beautiful for texture, because what you do is use a bit of that on top of something and you get this lovely speckles. I love the thin end for freckles in portrait illustrations, or like figure illustrations, face illustrations, that sort of a thing. It's great to create that natural skin imperfection. Yeah, skin imperfection is totally overrated. Currently, when plastic is fantastic, it all starting to look like some sort of inhumane creatures, all with the same face. Did I say overrated or underrated? I meant underrated anyway. Natural skin. There we go. We have a lovely array of textures and bits and pieces, and now we can translate some of that. Oh, I didn't show you that. Okay. We can also translate that into then the art piece that we're going to be working on. So here I'm going to show you beautiful Daleroni inks, and then we will start playing. So again, you can see you can use them in place of watercolor, so as a watercolor, or you can saturate them and use them like acrylic almost, but it wouldn't have the texture of an acrylic, because acrylic paint, especially full body, would dry with that texture, which this can't do. Okay, so we have got lovely juicy colors. As you can see, that green again would be great in that place, but you can see here we have got a watercolor in green gold versus green gold in acrylic ink, and that is so much more saturated, just glows off the page. I will start with Shadow Violet again, with whatever mix we've done here, and I'm going to start with that sort of jellyfish round shape. So thereabouts, I think I'm just gonna let two colors move into one another. That's always quite pretty. Okay, So I've done the same thing. And what I would do next is this. I would go into my, I've got a number of these Neo colors. And I would just kind of scribble at this point, like so. Just bring out some of the colors. Maybe create some centers. They do have a little bit of a center here. And then we have this beautiful, like a grayish blue color. So we have got light gray, so that's this color. Then we have got the, I think it's beige, yeah, beige. And then this is Payne's gray. Yep, it is Payne's gray. Have I told you the colors of these? If not, this is just a dark gold in Neo Color 1. And then these ones are, so we have got May green, then we have earth green yellowish, and then the third one is earth green. And in the pencils, I first use the Spring Green by Luminance, and then the Olive Yellow, also Luminance, and finally Holbein Apple Green. Here the first one was 158, then we have 228 and N60 at the end. And I think these ones I told you. All right. So at this point, what I'm going to do is just add a bit of water to just melt things. And notice what kind of textures we're getting here in addition. So you can leave them as striking as you want or blend them in more. They behave really well. So you can control them and work with them. So you can see I can even pull it out slightly further down like so. So those are our medusas. I think I will leave the center as it is. And then I'm going to play with that pencil and just add some of those shell shapes. Also, obviously, if you're adding this pencil on top of another color, that might change things. So I'm just going to add a few bits here and there. Now onto the green. At this point, I think I'm just going to add this green in a few. Oops, this might be too much. So the beauty is that you can accidentally add too much, but you can play with it. I absolutely love it. What's happening here, for instance, mixing the Neo Color 2 with the beautiful colors. I can also take it around here somewhere like that, just sprinkle it around. So look how beautiful it responds. So the acrylic ink has done quite nicely mixing together. Okay, so the next thing I would do is possibly add some of these green pencils. Now you have to be careful, again, like I said, some papers, so this won't like it because it's a thinnish paper and going into wet areas might not be a thing to do. So let's see, we've got some lovely gray here, so I can start creating a little texture here and there. Like so, and then I can also add a few dots. Like that, and then we can add maybe a touch of this. There's some blue reflecting off the stones, the rocks rather. So now let's try and melt these two colors together and see what happens. Okay. So as you can see, it becomes quite pretty. Now I wanted to show you what happens if we add those darker colors. And in this case, this is acrylic ink. I'm not sure how that's going to work over the oily pan. So I think I'm going to start with a bit of this color for that brown that we had instead of the black. Oh, look at that beauty. So see, that's an accident, but it looks gorgeous, this accident. So I'm going to add this lovely contrast. And I'm also going to see where else I want this contrast to go. So I'm just going to add beautiful color right at the bottom. Yeah, it doesn't respond as well going over the white. So the white I have here, and I think that I should go with watercolor in there. So in fact, I'm going to find, now I'm going to go with the blue because in fact there is this gorgeous blue on the rocks. So I'm going to go mix up Indanthrone blue with Moonglow. And then go over it. Doesn't seem to want to do the same as it's done here for some reason. That's strange. So that's a good color regardless though. So I'm just gonna sprinkle it around, maybe mix it in some of this brown here. So you can see I'm just using all these beautiful supplies as I would use watercolor. Okay, so quite happy with all of this. The only thing that's remaining is textural kind of fine touching. So I'm going to actually add these art supplies at the end when things are dry, but I also want to add a little bit of this dark contrast, and that is the darkest. So I'm just kind of trying to move my brush to not disturb all the beauty that we've done here. So here, for example, that is a bit much because I feel like I don't need that much there. So I can lift it, I can correct things, push it a bit further away, and then you can pull it out and, you know, layer it with other things like so. So at this point I'm going to wait for it to dry and then go back into it. So we have here two different pages, just the watercolor, and we also have a beautiful concoction of different mediums. And I can see that there is a lot more contrast and a lot more interest. And I'm naturally drawn to this version because I can focus onto lines and marks that I'm not getting here. So for example, my favorite areas so far are these two areas, so one here and one there, because of the beautiful blossoming that's happening when the two colors met from the tombos. So you can see here how gorgeous this is, and this is something I would make a note of and take it into another project. And you can see the same happening here. It's just a beautiful texture. So now let's take our regular pencils, and we've got some watercolor pencils as well that we haven't used. So let's do watercolor pencils first, maybe. So the three colors we have got here. This is supposed to be a bit of that seaweed. So I'm just going to add it. Personally, I really love adding watercolor pencils on top of other mediums and kind of blending it. So I'm just looking at areas where not just going into a white area, but maybe overlaying a bit of previous medium with a bit of this medium. And then also blending colors through. So if I've got a darker color, I'm just going to bring it in. And then finally this sort of grayish green. You could also create a bit more texture or shapes on the medusas themselves. So rather than just leaving them plain, you can go ahead and just add some lines here or there, like that. Bearing in mind these are watercolor pencils, I'm now going to touch a little bit of water over them to activate the pigment. Usually, if it's a good watercolor pencil, it will become even brighter. And I can do the same over the jellyfish, keeping some lines and blending others, again for extra textural interest. And that has to now dry completely for us to finish with the pencils. So the next step is colored pencils and Neocolor One. Now Neocolor One will go over anything, so bear that in mind, especially this gold color. What I would like to do here is just create some mark making over larger areas that I want to add some interest into. So I don't want to just have like a blob of green paint here. So I'm just going to add a bit of marks. Keep in mind, Neocolor One does not dissolve with water, so it will stay where you put it. So I'm just sprinkling it here and there, breaking up some areas. And also, if you would go over that paint, so for example, if I just go over it with this dark blue, it should resist. There we go, so it's resisting. Okay, and then finally I've got these green pencils which I want to just add a bit of color, just a little bit. Goes well over darker colors, especially if it's like texture wise, like an acrylic ink. Does it quite well. It is up to you how much of it you're adding. This is a similar color. Okay, I'm just going to go back into this. This is a lovely color to go next to it. which is the olive something, olive yellow. I could go on and on and on. This part is quite enjoyable. Just sort of doodling and mark making. By the way, there is a new class I have created. So yeah, check out that course. It's at a fantastic price, and it was important for me that I am realistic with the price and that it's, you know, affordable to most people. And so it is about doodling and it is about watercolor. So if you like this sort of thing, creating textures, exploring and just having fun, then definitely check it out. It's on Teachable. I'll try to leave a link here for you. All right, so I will leave it at that, but you get the idea that it just becomes a playground of textures and a playground of values. So for instance, here the values are medium to light. There isn't something that is very, very dark. Of course, I could go in with Payne's Grey that would be darker than the rest and add those marks. But it's just not the same thing. So of course I could build on the values here as well, but to me, I just enjoy the line and the finishes that you can get with other supplies. And as I'm looking at the finished version, I'm getting more and more areas that I'm in love with. So before I just had these two, and now I absolutely love what's happening around here and here, layering a number of different art supplies. I love this area right here and this area. Wherever there's just layers of different mediums, pencils, watercolor, water soluble art supplies, it just becomes super, super interesting. So try this for yourself, see what you think, see what gives you more joy. And I hope it has inspired you in some way to explore textures and to explore landscapes. There's so much you can do just by looking at things and interpreting them in your own way. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.